What's up, guys? Today what we're going to be talking about is every single Canadian Premier League team starting in the 2019 season. So first of all, something that I wanted to address is to show me that you want more CPL content from me. Don't forget to like this video. So for the first team that we're going to be talking about is Calgary FC, Calgary's team. They were the second team announced in the Canadian Premier League officially. They were announced in May of 2018. Their manager is former Calgary Foothills manager Tommy Wheeldon Jr., an Englishman who knows a lot about soccer in Calgary. In terms of their stadium, they actually have a pretty weird stadium plan. They plan to build a 6,000 capacity soccer specific stadium in Spruce Meadows, which is an equestrian facility at the current moment, so it's like a horse facility. They want to build a 6,000 capacity stadium where they're going to host all of their home games. Their team colors per their naming is Army Green, Calgary Red, and Black on Black. So far they have signed 6 players, all of them are Canadian. Some of the notable players are Sergio Camargo, who was signed for 1 season to Toronto FC but didn't make any appearances for them. He also played for KW United. I'd say a bit of a bigger name is their goalkeeper, Marco Carducci, who is a former Vancouver Whitecaps backup goalkeeper who made no appearances for them, and Nick Ledgerwood, who I think is probably the most significant player on their team so far. He's played for the likes of FC Edmonton and Hammarby in Sweden, so now he's moving over from FC Edmonton's Nassau team to the Calgary team, so now he's on the other side of the rivalry. Now for the second team in the Canadian Premier League, FC Edmonton. FC Edmonton was originally founded in November of 2009, where they competed in the North American Soccer League, NASL, until the end of the 2017 season, but they were able to bring back professional soccer to Edmonton through the Canadian Premier League, and they refounded FC Edmonton. This time, they have a different manager in charge. It's their former assistant manager for their NASL side, Jeff Paulus, who's now actually their manager, and he was also academy director for FC Edmonton's academies during their Nassau era. In terms of their stadium, they're playing in the same stadium as they did before back in their Nassau days. They're playing in Clark Stadium. This time though, it's renovated and the stands have been reconfigured to make it into a 5,100 capacity stadium. They made the stands more spread out, and they put stands on 3 of the sides, I believe, and it's made it look a lot better and a lot more of a stadium than previous years where it seemed like they had 1 or 2 stands up and it didn't look like that high quality of a stadium. In terms of their colors are Prairie Blue Sky, River City Navy, and White Rabbit. So far they have signed 6 players, just like their rivals in Alberta, Calgary FC. Some of their biggest names in their team are Randy Edwini-Bonsu, who has played in the 2nd division of Germany and actually made appearances for them. And then they also have Alan Zebby, who used to play with their Nassau team. Now for the third team on this list, Forge FC, which is Hamilton's team. They were first founded in May of 2017, but then they were later announced in July of 2018. Something interesting to note is they were one of the first teams, their owners was one of the first owners interested in making a team in the Canadian Premier League. Their manager, I'm not quite sure if I'm pronouncing this properly, is Bobby Smirniotis. I feel like I really butchered that name there, but let's go with it. He managed the academy of Greek side Olympiacos. He managed one of the academy sides, so he takes great experience from there. But one of the teams that he managed more notably and he co-founded was Sigma FC, where the likes of former Toronto FC player Moham Babouli played at a point, but now he leaves them to manage Forge FC. In terms of Forge FC's stadium, they will be playing in Hamilton Tiger Cats' stadium, which is Tim Hortons Field. It's a 24,000 capacity stadium. They're limiting it to actually an increased amount, which is 14,000. So their colors are platinum steel, spark orange, and waterfall white. It takes great inspiration from the manufacturing industry in Hamilton. Forge FC have only signed 2 players, but they're some of the biggest signings so far in the Canadian Premier League. Let's hope that the signings get a bit better in the Canadian Premier League because they've been inspiring, but maybe not as inspiring as I may have hoped. But they signed Chris Nanko. He's a former Philadelphia Union draft pick, but he never played for Philadelphia Union. In fact, he was first signed to their USL affiliate club, Bethlehem Steel, and he made many appearances there as a forward. On the other hand, probably one of the biggest signings so far in the league, Kyle Becker, a former Toronto FC midfielder. That's where he made most of his name is. He also played with Montreal, FC Dallas, and most recently played with North Carolina FC and USL. He made a decent amount of appearances for Toronto FC. He made 29 appearances. As a Toronto FC fan, I didn't find he was the greatest, but for the Canadian Premier League, I think so far he's one of the best players in the league right now. And Forge FC have got a lot of things lined up that look good in their prospects for the first season, so you can expect them to be one of the big teams leading the league forward for the next few years, in my personal opinion. Now for HFX Wanderers, who were officially announced in May of 2018. Of course, they're Halifax's team. They're the only Atlantic Canadian team in the Canadian Premier League so far. Their manager, Stephen Hart, in my opinion, is the manager with the biggest pedigree out of all of the managers in the league. It's Stephen Hart. He's the former Canadian national team manager, and most recently he managed Trinidad and Tobago. He even got them into the last qualifying round for the 2018 World Cup, the Hex. So in terms of Halifax's stadium, what they want to do is redevelop a grounds called Wanderers Grounds. They're going to name their stadium after that, I believe. And basically they're going to build a 6,500 capacity stadium that you can remove the stands at the end of each season. So in that way, in that sense, it's sort of a temporary stadium as it's been listed in the papers, but it's Halifax Wanderers' current permanent plan for a stadium in the city of Halifax and in downtown Halifax. So HFX Wanderers colors are Aqua Ocean, Naval Grey, and Harbor Blue. Although they have one of the best managers in the league, in my opinion, I think they also have had so far one of the worst track records in the league in terms of signing players, as they only have one player, former FC Montreal, which is now a defunct team. It was Montreal Impact's USL team affiliate. Former FC Montreal player Zachary Secunda. He was in Montreal Impact's youth system, and he's a fullback. He should be good on the flanks for HFX Wanderers, but it's fairly disappointing that they've only signed one player, and now we're a few days into the January transfer window. Now for the next team, Vancouver Island's team, Pacific FC. They were unveiled in July of 2018. Their manager is actually a very interesting pick. It's Michael Silberbauer. He was the former assistant coach of one of the heavyweights in Swiss football, or maybe not heavyweights, but one of the top teams in Swiss football at the current moment, FC Luzern. He now moves on to manage Pacific FC, so he should bring a different style of football. He's a former Danish international, has made over 20 appearances for the national team, which is very interesting. It's nice to have those international players in our team, and it's going to be interesting to see how he proves himself in Canada. So for their stadium, they're going to redevelop the West Hill Stadium, which is located in Langford, BC, and they're going to redevelop the stadium into a 6,000 capacity stadium. I believe it was originally projected that they were going to make it into an 8,000 capacity stadium, but since they had some complications, then they were only able to make it into 6,000 capacity. So their colors are Starfish Purple, Lagoon Blue, and Lighthouse White. Those are their official colors. Similar to HFX Wanderers, now on the other coast of Canada, on the Pacific side, Pacific FC has struggled with signing players. They've only signed former Whitecaps 2 player, Caden Chung, who's a left back, can also play right back. And I mean, it doesn't look the most positive for them that they've only signed one player, but we'll have to see how their team gets on over time. Now on to Winnipeg's team. They were officially founded in May of 2017. but they were officially announced in June of 2018. Their manager for the 2019 season is Robert Gale. He's the former U20 manager for the Canadian national team, and he's managed at multiple different levels within the Canadian youth system. The stadium that they're playing in is by far the biggest stadium in the league. It's 33,000 capacity. They're playing in CFL team Winnipeg Blue Bombers Stadium. It's Investors Group Field. As I said, it's 33,000 capacity, but it sounds like they'll be lowering the capacity to around 7,500, as someone told me in the comments in the last video. Make sure that you comment on the video if you have any suggestions, if you have any ideas to tell me about. But they're actually only using one side of their stadium and only certain stands of their stadium. So similar to Forge FC, they're limiting the capacity of their stadium so that they can have a nice intimate atmosphere for the fans. Valor FC's official colors are Valor Maroon, Wheat Gold, and Earth Black. The whole name and the whole theme around Valor FC is very much World War I themed, as it's named after Valor Road, which is about these three people who lived on the same street, I believe. From my limited research about this, it sounds like it's about these three people who were very significant figures and got a Victoria Cross in World War I, and they all lived on the same street, and they were war heroes in World War I for Canada. So the whole team name is very World War I themed. So far for Valor FC, they've signed 3 Canadians, 1 Englishman, totaling to 4 players. Their Englishman actually trialed when he was 20 years old with Toronto FC, but didn't get signed to the team. He's a striker though for them. But more notably, they signed Skylar Thomas, who's a former Toronto FC 2 player. He was drafted in MLS Super Draft, but immediately signed to Toronto FC's second team. He should be a solid defender for the Canadian Premier League. Now on to York 9 FC. They of course represent York's 9 municipalities. That's where their name come from, York 9. They were officially unveiled in May of 2018. Their manager is Jim Brennan, a very notable figure, probably one of the most notable on this list, especially for Toronto FC fans, as I am one myself. But he's Toronto FC's first ever captaining Toronto FC for a few years. And he also played with other teams like, here, I'll just read them out like this. So Southampton he played for, Norwich he played for, Huddersfield he played for, Nottingham he played for, and Bristol City, so all notable teams. And in terms of his coaching experience, he's managed TFC 17 squad and Aurora United, who play in League One Ontario. So he's got an impressive playing experience, but not as much of an impressive coaching experience. So for the 2019 season, they're going to temporarily play at Alumni Field, and then they'll later move on to York Lions Stadium, in an 8,000 capacity stadium that's newly renovated. They're hoping that near the final stretch of the season, they'll be able to move to the newly renovated stadium. And then something that's interesting about them is that they plan, and within the next 3 years, although they don't have much planning for it, they do plan to build a 15,000 capacity stadium. So that's very interesting for the league and for the sport in Canada to see that the Canadian Premier League teams are already looking to make their own soccer specific stadiums that are over the capacity of 10,000, 15,000. That's pretty amazing that they're getting that. Their official colors are electric green, charcoal gray, and black on black. So far, they have signed 4 players, including the first ever international signing for a team in the Canadian Premier League, which is Swedish striker Simon Agi. He played in the Swedish second division. I think he had a good season with his team there, and now he's making the move to the Canadian Premier League. They also have 3 Canadian players, including journeyman Kyle Porter, who has played for Vancouver Whitecaps' first team, DC United, where he actually had substantial appearances. I believe with Vancouver he only made 1 appearance. And he's played for Tampa Bay Rowdies, which I think is most recently he played for them. And he also has played for Canadian USL team Ottawa Fury. So that about wraps it up for this video. So what do you think about these teams? Do you support any of these teams? Leave that in the comments down below. Don't forget to like if you enjoyed the video, that always helps us out. Once again, thanks for all the support for the last video. Please subscribe if you want to see more content from me and more content about the Canadian Premier League. And that's about it. So until next time, see ya.